So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Share Screen Africa, our Changing Hearts and Minds Exploring Environmental Education in Africa series. A special welcome to our primary audience, Dr. Cheryl Ogilvie, and a class at TUT, the Tshwane University of Technology. So, when you were younger, somebody must have asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And there might have been answers like a policeman, a lawyer, a teacher, a politician. For those in this field, we knew early on that we wanted to be involved in protecting Mother Earth. Even so, there's always a plan B, and I have a confession to make. If the marine biology degree didn't work out for me, I was planning on becoming a superhero, more specifically, the Pink Power Ranger. Today, I am proud to say that we have another ranger joining in, and that is Prudence. So Prudence is going to do the Q&A, and that means I am not going solo today. So Prudence, if you can just give a wave. And then we get to today's speaker, somebody who combined his dreams and passions to become a conservationist and a defender of the earth. That is our speaker, Mr. Ruben Hazelzet. He is the creative director and founder of Soapbox South Africa. He is the founder and joy facilitator of Secret Sunrise in Amsterdam. And in addition to this and many more, he is also the co-founder and visual designer of Doet Jazansen. And with that, I hand over to you, Captain Fanplastic. Mr. Ruben, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. You found some nice pictures of me there on the internet, eh? Lovely.
Yes, there's another one.
Great. 100 students seeing me in this, but that's actually the point of today. So I guess that's good. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for getting up this early and coming to listen to this little talk that we're going to do about behavioral change and conservation. Sorry, we're going into conversation, but we're going to talk about how behavioral change can help conservation, can help us care about the environment more. And we're going to use one of our flagship projects and our favorite Captain Fanplastic, who is a pirate who believes that plastic waste is no trash but treasure. And as you can see from this picture, he's not the only pirate who believes that. And I'm going to tell you how we instill this behavior in South Africa and beyond. But before we get to that, so my name is Ruben Hazelzet. I mean, you already saw a nice picture of me and some of the credentials. Maybe it's nice to mention that I studied international economic studies in Maastricht in the Netherlands. So I'm originally from the Netherlands. And I did my master's in behavioral economics. So I'm very interested always in why people behave in a certain way and how we can influence them for the better. So it always has to do with, something around social impact or changing one's behavior that not only is good for themselves, but also to the environment they live in, let it be the community or nature as a whole. I came to South Africa almost 7 years ago. As you can see, my beard has turned gray. I would say it's from everything that I learned from this beautiful country, not from the concerns or the despair, but more about the things that South Africa has taught me. And it has taught me so much. It gave me so much purpose in what I wanted to do with my work. I came here together with my partner, Annemiek, who's a doctor. And if you would ask me, she's a real superhero because she works for Doctors Without Borders in war zones and whatever. So I'm more stationary here and doing my best here in what I do. But we came here to have more impact with our work. And I started Soapbox South Africa, around 6 years ago, I guess, to really help companies to improve their impact, not only in South Africa, but also beyond. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our company. Then I'm going to introduce behavioral design to you. And I will need a volunteer to help me to showcase something. So if you guys can help me with that, that would be amazing. And then we will have our case study of Captain Fanplastic, where I try to explain a little bit how we implement behavioral design in our work. And then obviously you guys can ask questions and we'll go from there. All right, so Soapbox, we basically mobilize youth and organizations for impact. We work actually a lot with students. I'll talk about it briefly, but we basically mobilize around sustainability, education, financial inclusion, and healthcare. We are a team of 50. We work in Cape Town, Amsterdam, and Maastricht. I used to run the Amsterdam office before I came to South Africa. We have over 10 years of marketing experience. And currently we're operating in, when it comes to marketing in these 4 countries. So the Netherlands, South Africa, Kenya, and Zimbabwe. If you look at what we do, we basically all link it to human-centered design, which is maybe a concept to you or not, but basically it has 3 phases. You have your inspiration phase, which is research. You have your ideation phase, which this is where all the ideas come and you set up your strategy. And you have your implementation phase, and here you test your best ideas to get to the best solution, which is often done within the marketing sphere through campaigns. And what human-centered design basically does is that it starts with a situation where you say, it could be that if we do this, we can change one's behavior or we can solve something. And then you go through this whole process to a situation where you say, no, it should be that this is going to work, because now you're for sure that you tested everything, you went very broad with your research, then you nailed it down through in-depth focus groups and interviews. Then you set up your behavioral challenge, because now you know what behavior you want to change and what impact you would like to have. So we call that a how might we question. So how might we influence all the students in the classroom to become conservationists and pursue a career in conservation? Well, we'll see if we'll get to that. And then from that, you again go very big in your ideation. So you think of a lot of ideas until you get to a point that you want to start implementing and testing these ideas until you get to the one solution. We've worked with a variety of companies in South Africa and beyond, but always within those 4 pillars that I said. So education, sustainability, financial inclusion, and health. And always on social impact projects or corporate social responsibility projects, as we call them. So some of our formats of Soapbox South Africa. So we're not only consultants, but we also develop our own projects. And within every pillar, we have 1 or 2 projects that we run. And one that I'm very excited to actually present to the students in the room is the SDG Challenge South Africa. It falls under our sustainability pillar. And here we basically mobilize university students and organizations to innovate and contribute to the United Nations SDGs. So that together we can create a better tomorrow. So what happens is basically from all the university, 5 top students are selected and they're linked to a big corporate, let's say a Woolworths or I don't know, like a Standard Bank. And then Standard Bank gives them a sustainable development goal challenge that is important to Standard Bank. And then the students will work together to kind of find the solution, and they will pitch together in front of a professional jury, and then one university wins. Then we have the climate diet, and you already saw a picture of me and my colleague Yanga earlier. There was a picture that talks about food waste and the problem around this. But we basically developed a concept where we would like to influence people to make more conscious food choices in order to battle climate change. And we host climate dinners and basically create content when we see that, you know, there are big effects of climate change, as we had in 2017 in the Western Cape when there was a huge drought. This is actually one of our dear friends, Lapo Manu, in the middle of the biggest dam in the Western Cape, which was completely dried up, and we kind of had him revamp a very water intensive dish, a lamb bunny chow, into a water friendly and climate friendly dish, which you can see there. Then obviously we have Captain Fanplastic. I will go more in depth in that, but here are behavioral challenges. How might we influence youth to understand the impact and value of plastic better in order to reduce plastic consumption and littering, and many other things, but we'll talk about that. Then we have Unboxed, where we like to influence young entrepreneurs to create a long-term business plan so that we can unpack their growth potential. And lastly, within our health pillar, we organized during COVID-19, we organized the project called Urgent Relief, where we influence donors to send digital shopping vouchers directly to South African families in need, so that they could buy food and overcome the food insecurities that they were facing because of the pandemic. Okay, that was a mouthful, but we're getting now to the behavioral design part, which is very fun for everybody, I would say, because we are all humans and we are all containing or having our very particular behaviors. So I always say that behavioral design is, you know, it talks about everything we do, and you will recognize things because you see it yourself doing, obviously, in certain situations. So to start, I actually have a question to all the students, and I know that you guys are not on chat, so I'm gonna ask you to write it on a piece of paper, and then I'm gonna ask the professor to read some answers, if that's possible. I want to talk about what behavioral design is. So I don't know if you guys have followed some economic courses, but what they say in economics is that people are rational and they want to maximize their utility, right? That's a takeoff point that's often economics uses. But the question is, how much of our decisions are actually made rationally? So I would like to ask in the chat and in the classroom, everybody to write down the percentage that they believe, the percentage of decisions we make that are rationally made. So how much percentage of our decisions are rational? Can we put that in the chat? So I see Grant saying 50%. Who else? Mai saying 70%. So 60% of your decisions are made rationally. That's what some people are saying. What are we hearing in the classroom? Dr. Ogilvy, what is the consensus there? I see 45%. 30%. Okay, people are now getting lower. They're losing confidence. Okay, all right. So let me just, I don't know if you guys see, let me just make some space for myself. So thank you so much. So if we look at the percentage, and this is basically a big research the godfather of behavioral economics did, which is Daniel Kahneman. He's very famous economist, but specifically on behavioral economics. And he basically researched this, and it is actually only 5% of our decisions are made rationally. And 95% of our decisions are made irrationally. Obviously, some people are maybe more rational than others, but on average, that's how it's divided. And it's not strange if you think about it. So how he explains it, he wrote this book, Thinking Fast and Slow. I can highly recommend it. And so Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. And he describes in there two systems. System one is basically your irrational side. It's very fast, it's intuitive. It constantly gives you suggestions on what you could do in a situation. And very importantly, it doesn't cost any effort, right? It's very easy. So for example, if I'm walking over the streets in a foreign country where I've never been, and I see a robot turning red, my system one will automatically, intuitively, so to say, give me a suggestion, say like, you have to stop, because this is something that we've learned, from young. System two is very slow. It's rational, so it's your rational side. It turns little suggestions into a conviction, but it also takes a lot of effort for you to do so. So that is kind of also the concept of this thinking fast and slow, because what Kahneman is saying is that your life is just too complicated to carefully evaluate every element of every situation, right? So that's why we have our system one that helps us to give shortcuts and gives us what are usually reasonable and reliable decisions. Well, we all know that sometimes we make very bad decisions in life. So from now on, you can just blame it on your system one, but think about it how you got to that point, right? Sometimes there's also a battle between these two systems. So for example, when you are running, right, and you know where to run, you're jogging, whatever, and you know what round you're going to do. So we can kind of say that whole running experience is done on your, system one, because you know where to turn, like you're just in a flow, so to say. But then while you're running, you start thinking about a math exam that you have coming up, or a very difficult question that you're trying to solve. And what you will see is that you will start to slow down and maybe even stop, because now you have to take all this like brain power and all this effort to kind of solve for this difficult question that you're asking yourself, right? So, and to go back to our robot that turns red, imagine that you have to rationally make decisions for everything you do during the day, right? Some people were saying 70% or 60%. You're making so many small decisions. Imagine that every decision you have to like, okay, but why did they pick the color red? I really like the color red. Why is red actually not an action thing? Maybe it's an action for me to go, right? Like you can't operate like that. You won't leave the house, basically. So yeah, it's about those shortcuts, but it is obviously 95% is a big chunk, right? So it not always goes right. But on the other hand, it creates an opportunity for us aspiring behavioral designers to start to think about, okay, if 95% is irrational and we can influence the behavior, and let's make it very straight, I'm very much about influencing behavior for the better, so something that is good for people and also good for their environment, then it creates a lot of opportunity, right, as well. Okay, so I understand that the students are all in one class, so that might be a bit tricky. So I would like to ask somebody to volunteer to do this exercise with me. Maybe you can raise your hand and then we can unmute you.
All right, we've got Amal already.
Oh,
Ruben?
amazing. Okay, super. Amma. Okay, so as you can see, there are two dotted lines here, vertical dotted lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when I click my button, you will see words appearing on the left and right side of these lines, on both lines, right? Left and right. And then I'm gonna ask you to loudly read whether the word is written on the left side of this line or on the right side of this line. And the same for this one, okay? You ready? Okay, here we go. And quickly, as fast as you can, okay? Here we go.
Left, right, 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 left, left, right. Big, small, small, big, big, small, small, big.
Okay, so and on the second line, where are they written? Left or right?
On the second line.
Yes.
Is it? It's both.
So from this line, where is this word written?
On my left.
Okay, and then this one?
Also on my left.
Okay, and then finish it downwards.
I must. Oh, should I say it again? Oh, big, small, small. Oh, left. Oh, okay. I got it now. It's left, left, right, left, left, right, right, right.
Okay, great. Okay, now I'm gonna ask you. We got there, Amma. So now I'm gonna ask you whether the words are in big letters or in small letters. Don't mind the left or right, but just go again from top to bottom, right? Start on left and then go.
Okay. Big, small, small, big, big, small, big, and big.
Okay, and then on the right.
Big, small, small, big. Oh, so confusing. Okay. Small, small, big. Small, big, small, big, small.
Okay, great. Can we have a hand for Amma? We got there. Okay, good. Okay, I mean, obviously you see what is happening here, right? It's a conflict exercise. I mean, we got a good display of what it does and how your system 1 and your system 2 are operating. So what happened was that your system, Amma's system 1 was very persuasive in telling him, like, no, you know, like, just read what it says. But then obviously his rational side was thinking about, no, but it's a trick, right? I'm being tricked. So you saw these two systems kind of playing, and you also saw that when he was doing the left-right, the left line was difficult for him and the right line wasn't, because here his system 1 wasn't giving him all these suggestions. Then when he went to like big letters and small letters, the left side was easier for him, because here his system 1 wasn't being so suggestive on what to do. So this is like how these two systems work, and there are many like examples of how, you know, you sometimes make a very quick decision, but then your rational side kind of says like, wait a second, is this really right? Okay, so now you know what's kind of high level what behavioral economics is about, and what the difference is, right, between, I can't go back, what the difference is with economics. So behavioral economics doesn't say that economics is, you know, isn't working or is bad, because obviously when you have to predict on a macro level, you need to have certain, you know, criteria to work from. So you have to say that people, you know, are rational and they want to maximize the utility, because their own utility, because otherwise it's very hard to predict, for example, what happens if you raise the interest rate or create more jobs or whatever. So behavioral economics and behavioral design really comes in play, I would say, when you work with a little bit a smaller group and you really want to zone in on why people behave in a certain way and how you can influence them. Okay, how do we change behavior, right? There are obviously many ways, but I really love this model, and I'm inviting you to recreate it on your paper in front of you, because you can apply it in your own life and maybe in your work later. But basically, it's called the BJ Fogg model. He's an economist who created a model of behavior. And what he says is that behavior happens when your motivation and your ability are high enough and you are prompted or triggered at the right time. So your motivation is basically, obviously, how bad do you want it, right? How bad do you want to behave in that way? The ability talks about how easy is it for you to do it. And lastly, a prompt is something that asks you to act. So what I want to ask you is, what are 5 ways of asking somebody to act? How can you, in 5 ways, ask somebody to act? Trigger them. You can write it in the chat, or somebody in the room can give me that answer. Think about what humans can. There are 5 ways of asking somebody to act. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Ruben, my team's coming to type it in the chat now.
Okay. All right. I invite others also to write it down who are following online. So what are 5 ways to trigger somebody or to ask them to behave in a certain way? What would you say? People on the chat can also give an answer. Okay, I see Jasmine. Instruct them, force them, encourage them, compete with them. Okay.
Ruben,
But-
I had to let him use my glasses. He's back.
Okay, that looks great. Think about what are 5. Okay, I'm gonna help you. What are 5 senses that humans have?
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
But man, I don't. So like I thought like a command, like
Yes.
Like-
Can you do it verbally, Ruben?
Yes, I mean a command is great, right? But that is a way, that is a hearing, right? That is hearing.
yeah.
But then you have 5 other ways, which is through sight, smell, taste, and touch. So, for example, when you drive on the highway and you see a billboard, it's in your face and it tells you to buy KFC or whatever. I don't want to promote them, right? That's one way. Then you're walking through your town and the bakery opens his door and there's a fresh smell of croissants coming out. What does he ask you to do? Buy my croissant, right?
Yes. Okay.
Then you are on a market and people give you a taster of biltong, let's say, right? Now you taste. So basically the prompt or the trigger in this model, it is focusing on your 5 senses. okay? But what you wrote down is really good. It's really good,
Sorry, I
but
wasn't quite sure.
it's in the hearing part, right?
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
triggering. Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Cool. So let's put this model into practice, right? So you see this graph and you see that the motivation is on the vertical axis and it goes from low to high. And then you see the ability on the horizontal axis, which goes from hard to easy, right? And then you see this line, this skew line here in the center. And basically what BJ Fogg says is that when your motivation is high enough and your ability is high enough to do something, you will end up on the right side of this line. And then in that area, triggers or prompts, so like I said, something like sound or taste or whatever, there they will work. If you are on the left side of this line, your motivation is either too low or the ability to act or to do something is too low. It's too hard, right? So then you can do all these beautiful things. It's often campaigns or communications or whatever, but they won't work because your audience is not motivated enough and you are not making it easy enough for them to do the behavior. Okay, let's put it into an example. I am an ice cream vendor, right? And I want to sell my ice cream to people. Okay, if I use this model, right, then first I'm gonna think, am I going to sell my ice cream when it's winter? Do I think that people are motivated when they are wearing beanies and big jackets inside the house, as we know in South Africa? Will they buy my ice cream? No, right? So motivation will be very low. Okay, so then I'm looking out.
The group agrees, no.
No, okay, good. Now summer is coming and people are getting out, right? And I see on my app that there's great weather for this weekend predicted, very hot and dry, and no wind, right? So now I'm like, okay, now people, that will be a good situation for me because the motivation will be high because people are literally melting. So I need to give them some ice cream to kind of relieve themselves, right? So now I go to a beach or a park, right? But I also understand that people are lazy, right? And maybe they are not bringing cash to the beach because they're they don't like carrying cash or it's not handy. So now I'm thinking like, okay, I need to think about a way how I can make this process of selling as easy as possible, right? So then I get like a Yoko or like a wireless situation on my phone, a QR code or whatever, so that I know that people, I'm unburdening them to pay me, right? In the most easy way so that they can only easily pay me with their phone, for example. But then I also want to make it as easy for them so that they don't have to leave their towel, right? So now I'm just gonna go to these people, to their towels with my wireless machine and say, would you like an ice cream? So in this model, you'll get to a point now that the motivation and ability for the behavior that you want to change or that you want to influence them buying one of your ice creams, the motivation is high enough and ability is high enough because it's easy for them. So now you can think about a prompt and a trigger. So question to the students: what is an ice cream vendor's trigger? A trigger that anybody in the world knows. What do they use to trigger the behavior? Jasmine is saying the sound, the bell, indeed.
Okay, Nomku's on her way.
Okay.
I'm typing in.
It's so good.
It is the car. It's the song. The song is the one.
Yes, or a song, indeed. Right?
Yeah.
Then everybody knows, oh, it's ice cream time. Indeed, very well. That's very good. Cool. Thank you so much. All right, so then I'm not going to go in too much depth, but okay, what I want to say about the BJ Fogg model is that you can apply it to your own life. Think about, oh, I want to exercise more and I want to run in the morning. Am I going to, how can I make it as easy as possible for myself? Let me pack all my running clothing and my shoes the night before so that, you know, I make it easy for myself. And then maybe I make a WhatsApp group with all these friends that are also running so that I up my motivation, because now other people are kind of reminding me and helping me to go. Or I record my own alarm where I go like, Ruben, get out of bed. You know what you promised to yourself, get up. And then it goes off, and then you know that your motivation is higher and you made it as easy as possible, and you created a trigger through your alarm or personalized alarm, and you go ahead. So this model can be used in your projects that you're doing, hey, if you want to study or whatever, but also in your personal life. Very shortly, but what we do after this, we kind of start to look at customer journey mapping, where we divide the behavior up in 3 phases. So you have your initial consideration, that's the first time you hear about something. Then you have your active evaluation, now you're interested. And then you have your conversion, where you basically do the desired behavior. In every phase, what we do is we look at what is the key information need, what are boosters to increase the motivation, what are barriers that we can take away to make the ability higher and make it easy, and then what channel do we use to create a prompt, right? What campaign or idea can we think of asking people to act? Okay, I see that I'm gonna go a little bit quick, but if there's more time, anyway, the motivation principles, right? So this is always the exciting stuff, but I'm telling you that when you use the BJ Fogg model, that very often when it comes to behavioral challenge, it is an ability thing, right? Because it's just too hard for people to do it. But motivation is also important, and it's exciting and it's fun, right? So you have this famous economist called Robert Cialdini. I invite you to write down the 6 principles of persuasion and look it up on YouTube. So 6 principles of persuasion. There he explains them, but I try to explain them in the context of conservation and the beauty of nature, etc. Okay, so social proof. I wrote my thesis about this, is the act where individuals look for something, look for social proof when they are in an unfamiliar situation. So once they are in that situation, so imagine that you're in a new city or a new country or just a new place in general, a new workplace maybe, they tend to believe that they're less likely to behave inappropriately when they copy the behavior of the people surrounding them, right? So if you walk on the street and you see 100 people look up to a building, you will look up because you're copying their behavior, right? When you see 2 ATMs and there's a queue of 50 people in front of one ATM and nobody on the other ATM, you won't try that other ATM because you're assuming that the bigger group tried it already and that queuing there is the right behavior, right? I've got this example of Captain Fanplastic, how we are using social proof to change the idea or to change the behavior of parents when it comes to plastic. This is a video of my colleague Yanga in rural KZN, making the village known that they are picking up the plastic of the village so that hopefully they won't litter anymore. So
The captain is fantastic. The captain is fantastic. Because he picks up plastic. Because he picks up plastic. We are fantastic. We are fantastic. We are fantastic. We are fantastic. We pick up plastic. We pick up plastic. The captain. 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 The captain.
okay, you get the point. So if we have these young, great new generation showing the right behavior to their parents or to the elderly, we might be even able to influence the older generation to do the right behavior. Okay. So then we have the second principle, which is authority. We listen to people who have knowledge in a given situation. Uniforms are not only hot, but also to be trusted. So if you look at, I mean, obviously that has surpassed now, but if you look at the past, a lot of, big fuel companies have always invested a lot in academics, doing research on why climate change is not real. And that propaganda and that message was then published. And then a lot of people believed it because they believed scientists or academics for their word. A very easy example is, why do we still have dentists in a toothpaste commercial? Because he's wearing his white jacket and because he's saying that it's the best product he ever used. We all believe it, right? Because he's an authority when it comes to teeth. Anyway, here you can see how companies have misused this in the past and basically have, spread a message that is not really great for people in the end, but also for nature in general. Reciprocity. When something is unexpectedly given to us, the value increases disproportionately and we are inclined to give something back. I just put here a personal example of something that we really enjoy to do, which is climb Lion's Head. And as you can see, we've done it many times. But what is so nice is that it creates reciprocity because nature and sunrises will always be different. So every day you will get an unexpected gift because the light will be different, or the clouds will be different. And because you are in nature and experiencing this, and you're getting this little gift from nature, you're inclined to maybe do more in your work to give back to nature. I mean, this is in a personal context. But a very simple example is that when you're in a restaurant, if a waiter gives you a candy, which doesn't cost anything, they research that your tip as a waiter will increase with 10%. If you give 2 sweets, again, it will increase. But the thing that works the best is you give the bill with a sweet, then you walk away, and then you come back and you give another sweet, and then you say, for you, another one. And now it is very unexpected and you personalize it. And now the value of this 1 rand or half a rand piece of candy results in like a serious percentage increase in your tip, which is very disproportionate, obviously. But I like to look at it more in the natural environment, so to say. Scarcity. We want something that is exclusive because it gives us the opportunity to get something others don't have. Sorry, my phone is listening in as well. I guess my phone is not sure about my talk. So in Cape Town during the water crisis, there were a lot of signs, right? Again, these were prompts or triggers on site on the highway talking about how many days were left of water, which created a lot of scarcity, right? And was actually worked very well, I would say, because they were communicating constantly day zero. So it really drove behavior change in the usage of water in the population in and around Cape Town. And I believe it lasted for such a long time that people are still showering a shorter period or still saving water or installed gray water. So there you also see when something happens for a longer period, it really ingrains into your behavior. Okay, liking. That's the fifth principle. We like people who are similar to us, talk like us, pay us compliments, and who cooperate with us. That's in general, right? That's the sweet talking salesman who talks to you on the phone and wants to sell something again. But you also have liking in the people you look up to, the role models. And some are doing a great job, but what I find concerning is when people with a great reach, you know, showcase behavior that is not really good for and not really realistic in general, but good for their following to look at. So you have all these influencers that have all these private jets and like fly for 10 or 7 minutes to another city and don't really care about what the impact of that is. So it's kind of like, in this case, you have all these like young people looking up to them, but they're showcasing a behavior that is not really like positive and good. So there's a need, in my opinion, for role models that, you know, showcase a certain behavior that is good for the world. I mean, you have, for example, this big influencer right on YouTube, Mr. Beast, and he does all this stuff, but he also, you know, has done this like content where he's cleaning up beaches with like lots of people, and he set up actually a project around cleanups, which I think is cool or is a step in the right direction, because now you have somebody creating content on something that is helping the world, and actually more than 100 million people watch it, right? Instead of seeing somebody fly from city to city for 5 minutes and then, you know, get on with their lives. Then lastly is the principle of consistency. So we like to stay true to ourselves and the choices we make. Single questioning can be highly effective. So you might notice that when you have said yes to visit a friend's birthday or to do something to them, it will be super hard for you to then call them up and say like, actually, don't want to come, because now you're only, obviously it's not your friend, but you're also lying to yourself. So what you see is that also often in sales, and in this case WWF, like when I was studying in Maastricht in the south of the Netherlands, there were all these WWF promoters, and they used consistency very sneaky in their sales process. So they would ask you, do you care about the environment? Or do you like animals, right? And then you would say yes. Do you think it's a bad thing that some animals are in danger? Yes. Do you like pandas? Yes. Do you think it's horrible that pandas are, you know, there's a chance that they are becoming extinct? Sorry. Yes. And then they say, oh, would you like to sponsor or whatever? Now you've said yes for four times, and then suddenly you have to say no, but then you're lying to yourself and you're like, oh, they got me, right? Anyway, this is obviously not only in the conservation context, but in many contexts this is used, but it's a strong principle. All right, so to look at Captain Fanplastic, the challenge we are solving is that, you know, on average, people use around 40 kilograms of plastic in a year, which is a lot. And unfortunately, the majority ends up in the environment still. And this is partially due to a lack of environmental awareness, understanding the impacts of plastic waste, but also service delivery. Coming back to our BJ Fogg model, right? Low ability. What happens if people can't, if there's no waste management, or there's no bins, or there's no recycling, like what can you expect from them? So the ability is low, so now the behavior doesn't happen. So our idea with Captain Fanplastic is that we can continue to clean up plastic from our environment, but wouldn't it be way better to change our behavior so that no plastic ends up in our environment in the first place, right? So we actually hope that through Captain Fanplastic, we raise generations in such a way that cleanups won't be needed in the future, right? So our mission is to turn young learners into friendly pirates that hunt for litter, consume less plastic, and manage it better. And we call that a no trash but treasure mindset. We've been doing this since 2018, and obviously contributing to the UN's SDGs. And how we do it is that we all work through, our program works through storytelling. So creating a narrative and a world that inspires children that they want to be part of, but very important, where they want to act as well. And our first book is translated in multiple languages, also more languages in South Africa, and we hope to add more along the line, because that's another challenge. Only 2% of South African children books are not in English, so are we preserving all the beautiful languages that we have in this beautiful country? We are trying to do our little part in that. We've wrote a second book, which really focuses on the 5 R's, as we call it: refuse, reduce, reuse, repurpose, and recycle. Because pirates are called pirates because they. That was a bad R, but anyway, my voice is going. And then a third book in collaboration with Zandile Ndlovu, South Africa's first female Black freediver, which is really cool. And this comes back a little bit, maybe also in our introduction to our introduction, is we wanted to work with an inspiring role model within the world of conservation who is real. She is called the Black Mermaid. And with that book, we want to inspire, future generations to pursue careers within conservation, but also explain how the ocean actually starts at your doorstep and you are connected to the ocean through wind and water. If we look at our theory of change, we really try to put our schools, our primary schools, in the center of our impact, with the aim to create a circular system where we facilitate our program, remove litter from the environment, but then install bins, which we call treasure chests, to keep in the pirate theme. Connect them with local collection partners of recyclables and non-recyclables. And then money or funds flow back to the school that can be used in, for example, their feeding scheme. So now we create a circular system where the waste really becomes treasure for the school, and the children can continue the behavior that we learned during our event. The program consists of 4 parts. We start with storytelling, and you could say that we use their liking principle, because we've been with this program all over the world, and there's one thing that children love, and that is pirates. I don't know what it is. It's the mischief, probably, but it's just something that children really love. So it's something that really triggers them, and that, yeah, they want to play with or be part of. And we tweak it to friendly plastic. Then we have our learning part, where we songs, repetition, and movement like that. We try to instill positive behavior change with key learning objectives like no trash but treasure, the captain's 5 R's, and the ocean starts here. In the innovation section now, the children become their favorite character. So they turn bottle caps into eye patches and they become little pirates and they become basically part of Captain Fanplastic's crew. And then finally, in the first module, we end up with a treasure hunt, which is completely gamified. They get treasure maps, they have to tick what they find. And at the end, we weigh their treasure and we select the most successful pirates. And the winner gets a prize. And there you can see how gamification and a chance of winning, but also the program that happened before really, really excites children. As you can see, you clean up an environment in 45 minutes because they're so enticed. Then the final part is obviously to leave behind bins so that the school can continue the behavior and the children remind themselves, which is called a nudge. They're reminded of the desired behavior, that they're still little pirates, and pick up treasure and put it in their treasure chest. I'm almost done, right? But the key learnings that we've had, I wanted to share, is that often plastic pollution breeds other social issues, because if there's so much waste around or in your community, and there's, for example, no waste management, or there's a lot of littering happening, then there's not a lot of social cohesion because you're not proud of your surroundings and you're not correcting each other's behavior. We've seen that teachers really need to be supported and unburdened to bring environmental education to schools. We always thought that we would just create the program and then give it to teachers and they would do the rest, but that was just not realistic. It's not how the school landscape works and the capacity that teachers still have, or the energy to kind of like do that. So we come in and we unburden them completely. Then we see that there's a disconnect between many communities and water systems. This is partially because if somebody can't experience the ocean, can't swim or can't see underwater, why would they care about it, right? So in our third book, we actually create magical goggles, which are VR goggles, where Zandile Ndlovu, the black mermaid, swims underwater and shows the beauty of the underwater world, and then children can look through their VR goggles and see her and see the beauty of it. Unfortunately, bedtime reading is not super common in disadvantaged families. So that kind of, that moment of like being read to and enjoying a good story is not always happening, because obviously there's other challenges of, time or money that these parents have to worry about. We've seen, unfortunately, and not only in South Africa, but a lot of grade 4 and 5 learners still struggle with reading and writing. So our materials actually have become literacy materials on itself. We say environmental literacy. Children care about every living organism. What children always say when we get to the beach, and at the end basically of our program, they say, we're here to save all the animals, right? So as a child, you have this empathy and connection with every living organism. And I believe that we need to keep that connection alive by, being in nature and not too much being swallowed up by, the cities that we live in or whatsoever. Something that I experienced, for example, living in Amsterdam, is that I couldn't get out of it so easy, couldn't get into nature that much. And then you kind of lose that connection. Storytelling can drive behavior change. I think we showed some examples of that. And then children can change the behavior of their parents. We're a big advocate of that. And then lastly, very important, is we can't do it all ourselves. We need to train others. So we work through a license model and have trained now many NGOs all over the world, where now all these captains, wear their hats, so to say, and spread the no trash but treasure mindset. And we're now operating in 11 countries and adding more as we go. So we're in Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde, Sao Tome and Principe, Madagascar, Maldives, Seychelles, Comoros, Mauritius, Indonesia, the Netherlands, and South Africa. So yeah, I guess sharing this project and allowing others to go out there and do this work has meant so much to us. And it's incredible to see how we are able to change children's behavior on like completely different contexts and places in the world. That was it. 11, sorry. Are there any questions?
Hi,
Hi,
Ruben.
Ruben. You've got quite a few students lining up here with questions. So
Okay.
Hi, Ruben, and everyone who's tuned in. I just think on behalf of the students and everybody else, I'd like to say thank you for your very inspiring and engaging presentation. I think for most of us also, it's very, it was nice to see the link between conservation awareness and environmental awareness and something like behavioral economics, which we don't see every day. So I think that was very insightful. I will open the floor now for any questions. And you're welcome to raise your hand virtually if you are able to. And for Dr. Ogilvy's students, they can give their questions. You can go ahead.
Morning, sir. Thank you so much for the talk. It was absolutely spectacular. I just wanted to ask, in what sort of time span are you looking at? How long does it take to basically start seeing the results of like how long does it take to actually start seeing any behavior?
I mean, great question. I guess like, you know, with my example of the water crisis in the Western Cape, you saw that those were all, you know, taking away people's long showers, right? That's a hard challenge to change. So there, I guess like something, it depends. I mean, it's a bit boring answer, but it depends a lot on, I guess, what your challenge is and how hard it will be, right? But if I look at, if we look at Captain Fanplastic, I guess what is essential, right, is that we work on the motivation part and creating this world where these children excite themselves and really raise the motivation that works for sure. It's just like, how can we make it durable and long term? And that happens when you start to be able to install, for example, waste management systems and like can start rewarding the schools for the recyclables and the non-recyclables. So that's the perfect situation, right? And I guess what we learned a lot was that our program, you know, teaches about empathy and a connection with an environment, and we do like pre and post tests to see how their attitudes towards the theme change. So we see in that like great results, right? Like their emotion towards littering changes. They want to correct the behavior when they see littering, stuff like that. But for us, it's really to close that loop, because then only, you know, children are reminded of it and they can really like hone into it. So for example, we work on the Comoros. There's no waste management in general there, right? Yeah. So it's then it's like, okay, it falls a little bit more towards literacy, but bringing this environmental message into the thing. And we obviously try to create partnerships to close that now also in the countries where we live, but some are quicker or it's easier to do. Also, you know, there then are like many islands, right? There are other things around it, but I guess I showed it shortly, but what is important is that you kind of like create smaller steps when it comes to driving behavior change. So start with like something small and then take them on that journey of like changing a small thing, and then you go and you go. And for that, you just need to do a little bit of the research, right? To understand what the behavior is, what the barriers are to change, etc.
Okay.
I hope that, yeah, it's a bit dependent on the situation. In the UK, sorry, I'll give one short. In the UK, they subsidize double glass because it's good for CO2, because a lot of houses were, you know, using so much energy to warm the house, but nobody used that subsidy, and it was almost like it was like incredibly favorable. Nobody used it, and then they started researching it, and then often these double glass is on the attic where it needs to change. And what do people store on their attic? All their junk. So the barrier to clean up their attic and then be able to install this double glass was too big. So then they lowered the subsidy and hired a moving company to help pack people. And it increased the ability, and now suddenly everybody wanted that. So like it's about really analyzing and honing in on like what the key variables are in the situation, I would say.
Yes, to basically just try and make it more convenient for them to do.
Yeah, in the end, people are lazy. That's
and then
just,
second question.
yes.
You were talking about sort of the bins and increasing the amount of bins that you've got in these areas. Has there been a massive effect with it? Hello?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, everything just disappeared. Sorry, has there been a massive effect with the bins? Because even if I look at like the university campus, for example, we've got bins all over the place, but it just seems to be a mental thing where people just kind of don't use it. It's not that it's inconvenient or anything, they just tend to not use it. And so I was just wondering what how effective the bin solution has been.
Yeah, I guess that's why we are focusing on storytelling, right? Is to create this. Now the bin looks like a treasure chest, so it's part of this whole world that you created, right? Okay. Just installing bins on themselves and then expect the behavior to happen is, I think, that unfortunately that often not the case. I know that in the Netherlands they reversed it completely, this agency one time, where there was this school and they had all these bins, nobody used them, right? So what they did was they made it extra hard to throw plastic away. So they, like, for example, one bin was like you had to lift 20 kilograms of weight to open it. Then another one was like had a cage around it, you had to climb over it. So there they went a little bit, they went completely the extreme other side to kind of showcase to the students, you have this all, like it's so easy, but you're pretending as if you're climbing a mountain, right? So they kind of reversed that whole concept. So it's just about like how you activate it, right? And then again, like go into your BJ Fogg and then say like, okay, the ability, it looks like that the ability is there now, but people are not motivated. So what triggers them? What narrative could potentially motivate them to keep it clean? You know, incentives. I don't know, like the recyclables are used for free ice cream in the canteen to sponsor that. I'm just giving examples. Anyway.
Okay, thank you so much.
Cheers.
We are going to take a few more questions from the class and then we'll move on to the chat and then we'll go back to the class.
Morning, Captain.
I mean, you're a real captain with your outfit, to be honest. Amma.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm great.
I saw pictures where your colleagues were busy with kids. So we're kind of like doing the same thing at KZ and at Indumo, where we had kids from different schools coming in almost every day, and we're educating them about the environment. And we made sure that they used all their senses while learning. And I can confidently say that they were not the same kids when they left the place. So my question is if we didn't educate the kids while they were young, do you think it would have been much easier to educate them when they were older?
What age were they?
They were grade 7, so roughly 12, 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ruben, the program, we start with grade 3s, 7s and 8s, but the last 2 weeks during the school holidays, we only dealt with grade 7s. And we did touch on that as well.
Okay, great. I mean, first of all, we applaud that. So good job. Sorry, I just hear Johan. I think we just hear you on the background. So basically, the reason why we focus on grade, like let's say grade 3 to 6, but like grade 4 and 5 is like our niche, I would say, is because here children, they have such a great imagination, right? So you really can like create a story that they really believe in and that excites them, but they also have the ability to now like link it to the real world. So in our learning, like in our book, Wanda the whale is eating plastic and they take the plastic out of her stomach, and then in our learning we showcase a real whale eating plastic. So we link it to children are able to kind of understand, okay, this is a world and I'm great, I want to be part of it, and I have all the imagination. But they're also able to now link it to their own lives, right? So personally, I really like working with children, especially primary school, because I mean, when they get 12, 13, 14, they're a bit too cool for school, right? So in that age group, it's harder to use something like this or with pirates. But there, I guess there is more excitement in looking at the science side of it. So like collecting plastic and then, you know, upcycling it into interesting materials. Like you have your Precious Plastic, which is an open source website where you can turn plastic into beautiful materials. So it's just like a little bit on adjusting the how do you say, the things that you teach, I would say, and in what vessel you bring it. And then secondly, in general, right, the older that a person gets, the more routines that person has, the more ingrained behaviors. So it will become harder to change their behavior. And children are obviously still young and can be taught and are eager to learn. So that's why a younger age group works better. And they still have that empathy that I talked about, that you can reiterate how important it is to keep that in yourself. Cool. Hello. Sorry, the internet is just dropping a bit.
Okay.
Okay, we're back. Yes. Hello.
Hi, Dr. Ruben. My name is Mpande Pruso, and I actually have 2 questions today. How long does plastic take to break down? And my second question is, how do we change this mentality of people saying that littering is job creation?
Oh, very good point. The famous remark in South Africa. Yes. I mean, not only in South Africa. Okay, I mean, in general, it will never break down. It will always be there, right? So it's like, that's why when we talk about the 5 R's, right? Recycling is the very last R that we need to focus on. We need to focus on refusing, reducing, reusing, and then repurposing, and all the way at the end, we recycle. So because, and don't get me wrong, plastic has done a lot of good things to the world also, right? It enabled us to package medicine, to preserve our food, etc. But it's just the relationship, it became a convenience thing for us too much, right? And because it became like in the Netherlands, for example, if you go with the train, they package slices of like raisin bread individually in plastic. And that's just a convenience thing of like, oh, you want a quick snack, take this, right? But we kind of like overstep there. So I think we need to redefine what our relationship with plastic is, still look at its qualities, but like look at how we interact with it. And then yes, the famous question or the famous notion that often happens. Listen, like, I guess for me, right, it is when we do sometimes cleanups. For example, when one of the pictures was in Bambai, in this township in Durban, right? We were cleaning up there, and then the whole, well, not the whole, but some community comes out and they're like, who pays you to clean this up, right? And you're like, nobody is paying us. We're just cleaning this up, right? But I guess that we hear that notion a lot of like, oh, I'm littering and I'm creating jobs, right? That's what I'm doing. We hear that a lot. And I guess we are trying to teach our children we are teaching the children what the impact of that is. Like you say, like that plastic will never go away. It will find its way in the ocean. And then at one point there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean, right? And then we showcase to the children that they are now not ordering fish and chips, but they're going to order in 50 years plastic and chips, because that's now on the menu, right? So we are trying to take away that idea of like, oh, you're creating jobs. We are rather looking at, yeah, like making sure that children understand what the impact of that is. And then secondly, but that's more long term, but we are more and more working with upcycling partners that actually can create jobs in like upcycling the plastic into building materials or into products, so that people actually don't lose their jobs, but they gain a job in a positive, field. I hope that helps answering your question.
Sorry, before you ask your question, may I please read 2 questions from the chat and then we come back to the class?
Yes.
The first question from the chat is from Yasmin Gordon, and they ask, how do we volunteer to be a pirate?
How do we volunteer to be a pirate? I mean, listen, we need to come that side, right? So what we are working on is finding more and more local organizations who we can train and license to facilitate the program. But we are and then secondly, we want to also create something that just empowers like local, people who are enthusiastic about it. So if you're interested, we are creating a kind of a list of that. You can always email us at info@captainfanplastic.com, right?
The second question from Grant Pearson, he says, thanks very much for the presentation. How have you assessed whether there is a change in behavior? What tools have you used for assessment?
Okay, it's like I said, so we do a pre-test before we enter the classroom to understand, and then we do a post-test after the program, and then we assess the attitudes towards plastic pollution, so littering, and the attitudes towards managing your plastic better. So, putting it in a bin, recycling, what concepts do you understand? And what we use for that is a Likert scale, right? Like you probably know, it's 1 to 5. And we kind of then see what the difference is between the pre and post test. What we've seen is that there's a huge increase, like a positive increase in the attitudes. But like I said, what is super important is that we then finish that loop by installing or creating the ability for the children or the community to continue the desired behavior. And I'll give you an example. Municipalities, they spend millions and millions on removing illegal dumping, right? Hundreds of millions of rands municipalities spend on that. But then they measure the amount of bins in townships areas based on a national average of 4 to 5 people per household. So they install the same amount of bins in township areas where there's a high likelihood that there's actually way more people living per household. So then you obviously get illegal dumping, and then you get municipalities spending millions to kind of get, solve that situation. And the funny thing is that plastic is valuable, right? It has oil in it. It is actually a real treasure. It's just that sometimes the right factories or manufacturing are not present yet, but in essence, that plastic that is laying around holds a value, especially if you look at the energy crisis in the world right now and in South Africa on itself. It's quite insane that we are bringing so much plastic to landfill that still can have a value in a certain way.
Okay, thank you. We can have the question from the class.
Good morning, Doctor. So
Hello.
my name is Anna. My question for today is, how can we substitute the use of plastics, and also how do we get the big companies such as ShopRite to help actually? Yeah.
I guess, I mean, it's a very good question in the sense of that there is also still a big role for legislation and for companies themselves, right? You see more and more now, you know, that you see these pictures, or in the past, you would see these pictures of like, you know, positive change starts with yourself, right? And I still am a true believer of that. Don't get me wrong. I think it's very important to change people's behavior, but, you know, a country can also just say ban single-use plastics, right? We're not doing single-use plastics anymore, and you'll get fined. And there are countries in the world that are doing just fine, you know, without single-use plastics. So I guess there's power to the people in the sense of that we need to advocate for this, right? And speak out about this. And then I think governments can set up a legislation, but I also am still like a big supporter that companies also take ownerships and lead, right? Lead the people to say, oh, we're not doing this anymore, actually, right? So it's threefold. It's like us changing our behavior and using, you know, using plastic that only we really need, and try to like reuse it as much as possible. And then governments looking at just creating good legislation and companies leading by example. That's kind of like, yeah. And look at Rwanda. Rwanda banned single-use plastic. They have every month, they have like a community day where everybody in Rwanda has to clean up. And obviously that's maybe a little bit an authoritarian regime, but another example is that in Japan, they only have one cleaner per primary school, because 30 minutes every day, the whole school cleans the whole school. So it's ingrained in their behavior. And what do we see during the World Cup? The Japanese supporters, they come in the stadium, and 30 minutes after the game, they're still cleaning up the stadium because they were taught from a young age that they should respect the environment they live in, right?
Okay, thank you.
Cheers.
Good morning, Captain. How are you?
Good.
That's good. Quick question. Sorry. So you did kind of answer my question, but I want to know, how do you bring about behavioral change in adults, and particularly with business people, because, you know, if they're making money doing using plastic, you know, that sort of thing, they're going to continue to do that because they might not be here in 50, 60 years, you know, so they don't really care.
Yeah.
And then a generational effect after that, because now they teach their kids, yes, plastic is fine, you know what? They listen to some random guy that comes up to them and says, don't use plastic.
Yes. Okay. I mean, for adults, okay, first of all, maybe I'm a bit like idealistic in it, but I truly believe that children can change the behavior of their parents, and they're very honest. They will call out their mom of getting like an extra plastic bag, and we get, you know, we create something that the children will do that. So I mean, to give you an example, we've run we created upcycled shopping bags, which says, I have reused this bag so many times, and then the children tick the amount of times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we run campaigns where they need to send their slip and their groceries with their mom, so that we install this behavior also at home and in the shopping behavior of the family. So we're trying to create interventions where we give the children tools to kind of like change the behavior of their parents. That's one way. When you look at companies, it's just like it is an economical situation, right? Or economical challenge. They will, like, we work for companies and they suddenly realize that they're actually making money back on all the cardboard that they are recycling, right? So it is about one, obviously having the industry or the landscape to recycle or upcycle in a good way, but then it will start, you know, become an economical thing for companies where they're like, okay, why am I throwing away this money? Why am I not changing, right? So I guess that is for companies, they just need to look at it, who use a lot of packaging or whatever. They just need to them, you need to go from an economical point of view, where you go like, these bags are cheaper to produce, or people want these bags more, and they are, you know, they can be reused more than a plastic bag. Like, it needs to have an economical benefit. And you have this thing, and this thing where in the old days, well, you still have it, you had philanthropy, right? Where a company would give money to a social need, but a social need that was far away from what their core business was. Then we got corporate social responsibility, where there's a social need that is closer to what the company does, and there's business expertise that they add to it, right? So now they are like interested, but still it's not really part of what they do. And then the last thing is what is called corporate shared value. Now they jump on a social need that is linked to their expertise. They add their expertise to it, and they create business opportunities. And that is the state where we need to go.
Thank you so much, and thank you for
Cool.
the talk. I appreciate it.
Yes, great.
I think we've run out of time for any more questions. So if there's any more questions, you can email them to Share Screen Africa and we can get them to Ruben. I'd like to call Mr. Johan Kruger.
I've got one student that would just like to thank our guest speaker for today.
Good morning, Mr. Hazelzet.
Hello.
So yeah, I'm here to just say thanks for the amazing talk. It's by far the most exciting talk I've ever joined, and I think my classmates. It was engaging, and we had a lot of fun. And while I'm here, I'm gonna abuse the opportunity and slide my question in. I'm sorry, Ms. Ngomo. I just wanted to ask, when you spoke about the SDG challenge, the Sustainable Development Goals Challenge, South Africa.
Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned you mentioned that, sorry, top 5 students are chosen and then put in contact with. I wanted to ask if there's any way where they write about that those students do. Like, I'd like to read up on what they've done.
Yes. So wait, so at the moment, last year we ran it in the Western Cape, but so with the 4 universities there, but we're working on making it a national thing. And I'm gonna, so you guys would very much also be, able to enroll. I just want to share in the.
Have you ever had a student from TUT?
And not yet. We just did it last year for the first. So it was. I'm sorry. I'm just trying. Last year it was. It was UCT, UWC, Stellenbosch, and CPUT who competed. So. But we are now adding more universities, hopefully this year, or we're doing individual company challenges where we link to universities. So if we happen to move in that side, it would be amazing, obviously, and then I'll reach out, obviously, to Mrs. Ogilvy to spread that news.
Of course, you're missing out on the best university ever.
I know. I'm realizing this during the talk. But thank you so much. It's called the university. Yeah, I put the link in the chat. So, and I will otherwise get it your way so that you guys can have a look already at it. Okay?
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And before we cut off, I would like to thank you as well, Ruben. Thank you. It was very, very good. And guys, my students actually benefited big time.